The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are so excited for today's show. We're here at the end of April, and we've got the fabulous Vince Redmond who's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. For those of you who've been watching the show for a while, Vince has been a regular from time to time, and then we haven't had him on in a long time, and so it's high time that we welcomed Vince back to the program. So Vince, for those of you who don't know, he's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he is also someone who has worked extensively in the field of autism. So for those of you may have seen, there is a DVD that you can watch it. You don't even have to get the DVD. It is on our YouTube channel, on Autism Live YouTube channel. And it is called Recovered: Journeys Through the Autism Spectrum. It was a movie, a documentary that was made, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think, would it have been many years ago? Probably 2008, maybe 2010. And the movie was made, what it does is it chronicles 4 kids that were diagnosed on the spectrum, and there's video of them when they were very young on the spectrum, and then you get to see them as teenagers, after they've gone through, and young adults. So it's like 3 little points of time in which you get to see them. And Vince is one of the therapists that he works with a little girl, Jana, in the film, and you get to see him when he was like 19 years old, working as a behavior technician with this precious little girl. Vince then went on to do lots of different things, including supervise children's cases, and then made the decision that his heart was in that he wanted to be able to help families, became a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I just think of him as absolutely being amazing because he understands all sides of the equation. So he's going to be joining us in a little while. So welcome to the show. So glad you guys are here for that. We're going to be talking specifically about stress for parents and caregivers. And I always give the disclaimer that, it is stressful. We have scientific documentation that it's more stressful for parents of special needs individuals than for parents of non-special needs individuals, and in particular, autism. I always want to say that is not because our kids are stressful. No, it is stressful because we feel this, we love our children, we want to help support them, and navigating all the things so that you can get the support that's right for your child. That's what's stressful. So we're going to be talking with Vince about that. One of the things we're going to talk about today is the jargon of the day, systematic desensitization. I'm going to get to that in a second. But first, the show is coming out to you right now live. We're premiering the show. We're on a whole bunch of different sites, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and the show will be available on our YouTube channel, picture and sound, pretty much right after the show airs live, and then it will be available as a free download, as a podcast, an audio-only podcast, wherever you guys get your podcasts. And I know that the vast majority of you, I don't know why it shook down that way. I guess it's because of life and how we live our lives now, that people are busy and they're in their car or they're walking, they're moving, whatever. So it's just that much easier to listen. So there are more of you listening than watching, but if you ever want to watch, if you want the visual, it's all there on the YouTube channel. 14 years is archived there on the YouTube channel, which is kind of, I don't know, I guess amazing. So we hope that you guys will check that out. Also want you to know that if you're getting the podcast, understand that that is a free download wherever you can download podcasts. We feel very adamant about that. For 14 years, we've been scrabbling to make sure that we don't have to charge you anything for getting this information to you. However, it does have a cost. So you will notice that there are advertisements on the podcast. I hope that you will embrace those because that's literally making it so that it is free to you. If you find, and some of you have written in and said, oh, I just, the way I listen to it would just be so much easier without ads. I'd pay for it if I could get it without ads. We have made that possible for you. So if you choose to, you can go and get that content. Go to glow.fm, glow.fm/autism-live. Don't be mistaken. When you do that, it's $5 a month, even cheaper if you buy it across a year, but you actually get everything that the Autism Network does. That's Autism Live, that's Ask Dr. Doreen, and all the podcasts that we are incubating. So you get those for that one low price, and you get them all ad-free. So that's a pretty remarkable thing. So check that out if that's the way that you, otherwise it's free and you listen to the advertisements and we're all happy, even the advertisers. So that's not a bad thing to do. I do like to remind you that while we have many experts that are on the show, I do not identify as an expert. I identify as a pony, a proud pony. I'm a parent of a neurodiverse individual, but I'm in your corner. You know what I like to say? We hold hands. Si se puede, right? We can do this together. So we are going to welcome our guest here in just a few minutes. But before that, our jargon of the day is systematic desensitization. Now, when we do jargon of the day, we like to give you an actual definition, which often has more jargon, and sometimes I make fun of it. Then we give you a working definition, and sometimes I have to make fun of that too. But we never like to leave without giving you something to try to begin to understand what this term means and how it might help you today. I am very fond of saying to people that when we started doing this show 14 years ago, it was very humbling to me. I was like, oh, I don't think I can, why would I be doing this? The phrase I said was, I have a face for radio. Why are we doing a video podcast? Right? But I always think if we're doing something, can it save someone 5 minutes or $5? And that's always my goal every day, that let's just move the dial a little bit. Can we save you 5 minutes and $5? And really the jargon of the day is there to save you the 5 minutes and the $5. Because if you had to pay an expert to sit and explain systematic desensitization, and they will, but they will charge you, X hundreds numbers of dollars for that time that they're explaining it to you. So we could save you that. Woohoo! I feel my work is good for the day. Not done, but good for the day. So let's take a look at what our actual definition for systematic desensitization is. It's a form of behavior therapy in which counter conditioning, there's a word, is used to reduce anxiety associated with a particular stimulus. And this comes to us from the APA dictionary, dictionary.apa.org, a form of behavior therapy in which counter conditioning is used to reduce anxiety associated with a particular stimulus. Okay. Stimulus is a $4 word, but counter conditioning sounds scary to me, because when people talk about conditioning, don't you automatically kind of lock up? I kind of go, ooh, they're trying to get me to salivate when they ring a bell, right? Like Pavlov's dogs. It's not quite that insidious, although it can be, right? Let's go on to our working definition and see if we can't make heads or tails of this. Systematic desensitization is an evidence-based therapy approach that combines relaxation techniques with gradual exposure to help you slowly overcome a phobia. That's from healthline.com. I would just add, it doesn't have to even be a phobia, but it can work with phobia, that if you're afraid of something, or if something is stopping you or paralyzing you, systematic desensitization can help us to overcome anxiety associated with all kinds of things in our life. So, okay, let's dig into this. Why would this be important to us today? Well, I will tell you from a personal standpoint that when after my son was diagnosed with autism, it was so intense for me that there was a period of time in which I think we could safely refer to it as a breakdown. But there was a period of time in which I could not leave my house. And it wasn't just leave my house. There was a period of time where I couldn't put makeup on my face because I was concerned about what was in the makeup. I was concerned about a lot of different things. I had anxiety that went thump, like through the roof. I was able to get cognitive behavioral therapy, and we worked on systematic desensitization for some of the more intense things that I was concerned about. I will tell you that the cognitive behavioral therapy and one of the techniques was the systematic desensitization was life-saving for me as an adult. I say that in case there is anybody out there that I don't think I've ever met a parent of an individual on the spectrum who wasn't battling some pretty intense anxiety. And so I put this out to you. If you are in a place where today, if somebody within the hearing of my voice is like, I don't know what I'm going to do because the anxiety level is so high, I want to say to you that there are answers. I'm not going to say that my answer was your answer, but it worked for me. And I know that cognitive behavioral therapy works for a lot of people. So I put that out to you that there is help for that. But let's also, my phone is going off. Let's also consider how would this help an individual on the autism spectrum. Well, sometimes our kids have something that they just have a reaction to. For my son, there was a period of time in which he would have meltdowns, and I didn't know what the meltdowns were about. He was young and he was having them in specific places, but I couldn't figure out what the meltdown was. He would have one in a grocery store. Every single time we were at one place in the grocery store, everything would be fine. We'd cross to the other part of the grocery store, meltdown. And we got help. Somebody came in and saw and realized that it was a difference in the flooring, that it was a grid, and that he was afraid he was going to fall through the flooring. And so this is now a phobia. This is something that they identified. We didn't even know what the cognitive thing was. He was like 4, and for some of our kids, cognitive behavioral therapy is not going to work because they're not at a point yet where they're old enough to have the skill level to have the ability to assess what their brain is working. But systematic desensitization still works even if we don't know the cognitive piece. That's why it's so important for our kiddos. Because years later, he was able to say, I thought I was going to fall between the holes in the grid. He thought it was a grid and he was going to fall through them. But what they did was systematic desensitization with him, where they, and it was on all kinds of different things. In the beginning, what they do is they take whatever the fear is and they try to make it so small that it's manageable. That might mean a picture of a grid way across the room, right? That he can be in the room and it's okay with that. We had a story on the podcast many years ago of a little boy who his parents were like, if we could get him to eat a banana, it would be amazing. For whatever reason, he has a fear of bananas. If you brought a banana in and put it on the table, this little boy would have a meltdown. This is no way to go through life. And for a while, his parents were like, well, I guess we're just not going to have bananas in the house. But then they go to the grocery store and you can't legislate that there are bananas in the grocery store. They were trying to get him ready to go to kindergarten. They were like, what's going to happen if he goes to kindergarten and there's 2 kids in the class that brought bananas for lunch? Heaven help us, the day is going to be over, right? So at this point, instead of trying to minimize that thing in the world, we start with systematic desensitization. And you go slow. You go really slow. On the one side, they teach relaxation techniques so that when this thing starts to bubble up, you have a skill set. You can do this with 3-year-olds. They teach 3-year-olds how to breathe, how to massage their hands, how to massage their feet, how to feel the floor beneath them, and to take a moment and stay calm. So they teach that separately. Without the presence, I'm going to use the banana story. Without the presence of the banana, they teach, when you're feeling upset, here are the 5 things that you can do. And that's unique to each individual, right? Because it has to be something that actually helps to calm them down. And they work on that separately. But then they start separate from that, they do the actual, it's part of the systematic desensitization, but they do the exposure. So they start with a toy banana across the room, and it's just there. And the little boy starts to feel a little bit of anxiety, and they go through the checklist. What are the 5 things that you can do? He's breathing through it, and he manages to get through that. If they find that he can't, they will put a picture of a banana across the room, and they'll make it like a postage stamp so that he can't even see it. But then gradually over a month, the postage size will become this size and this size and this size until they get to the point where having seen it, the techniques that he has mitigate the anxiety, that he is able to manage that amount of anxiety. And if they find that he can't, they make it smaller, smaller, smaller until he can. It might take a year, but they're going to slowly have this banana get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it'll be the toy banana. And then eventually it'll be a real banana. And then the banana will get closer and closer and closer until there is a day when he is able to cut the banana open with a plastic knife, look inside, potentially even taste it. And what happens and what we see with systematic desensitization, because you're building your tools of dealing with the anxiety while appropriately the amount of exposure is just less than what you can manage. Because what happens over time is the brain starts to let go and go, well, nothing bad happened. Like I started to feel anxious, but the banana was there and it was okay. Until, that little boy within, for him, I think it was like a 6-month period of time, he was eating the banana. He was no longer afraid, and he's not moving through his life with this fear of bananas because nobody needs that in their life. So systematic desensitization. How do you use it? When do you use it? You really only want to do this with an expert. And I always like to say systematic desensitization is different than flooding. Flooding is when you take the thing and be like, here's the banana, it's there, get over it, kind of a thing. We don't ever do that with children. Not ever. There's no good reason. There's no reason to do that. So please, no flooding for kids. But if you're interested in systematic desensitization, you would definitely want to work on that with someone who knows what they're doing to help you to be able to do it in a way that is kind and considerate. This is like the ground of everything, is that systematic desensitization, the whole point of it is to increase those coping skills, so that it always is manageable. You are never putting someone in a circumstance deliberately to make them feel anxious. But I do want to say, many people go, well, just let them be. Just let them be. Why are you trying to condition them to something else? Because it becomes debilitating. And that's why I took the time to say about me being agoraphobic, because there were people who were saying to me, so now you're going to be agoraphobic, so you just stay home. And the things that I would have lost from that would have been huge, right? So we got to manage anxiety to a certain level so that people can have their lives. It's not fun to go through life being terrified of a banana. It's not necessary to be terrified of a banana. It's not necessary to be completely unglued if you drive home a different way than you normally do. If you have kiddos in your life that are stuck in a routine that causes them huge anxiety, one thing at a time, don't flood. Systematic desensitization, work with somebody who's a professional to help you to do that, to free them from the bondage of whatever this phobia or fear is. Okay. But I got an expert for you. So we're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, we're going to have the fabulous Vince Redmond. I can talk. And we're going to talk about stress for ourselves and how we cope with it. So don't go away. Welcome back to Autism Live. As promised, we have one of my favorite people on the planet with us today. And Vince Redmond is, there's so many amazing things to say about Vince Redmond. Vince Redmond was a regular on this program forever. And the only reason why he hasn't is because I am just like a miserable scheduler. But I'm thrilled that I managed to schedule him today. He's also a very busy man. If you don't know, if you haven't watched any of the old shows with Vince Redmond, he is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He is at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and wears many different hats there. And I'm going to have him talk with us a little bit about what he does there. But what's amazing, one of the many things that's amazing about Vince is that he started out as, a beginning therapist, a BT, working with kiddos, and has devoted his life to helping not only individuals on the spectrum, but the families who love them. Over the course of, many years, he became a licensed marriage and family therapist. And so he has this unique perspective that he can talk about the clinical aspects of ABA and doing ABA with a kiddo on the spectrum, but he is very eloquent and able to talk about the emotional strain of just being in this world where so much is asked of the parents of individuals on the spectrum. So, excuse me. And of course, now I have a tickle because I'm so excited about Vince being here. So let's get him in here. Welcome back to the show, Vince. It's been a hot minute. Yay, he's here. So while I'm choking, I want you to take a minute and tell everybody about the many hats that you wear at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
The many hats. Yes, I am the Director of Safety and Family Services at CARD. So I oversee the safety and security of the centers, making sure that they're safe for the kids, making sure they're safe for staff, make sure that, there's no potential hazards, the security cameras and security systems are working, and then plus any investigations that come up in regards to, center safety or anything of that nature. But what I'm most passionate about is family services. As Shannon, as you had said, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And throughout my 30, going on 31 years now with CARD, I've had a passion and a very, strong drive on family services. How do we support the whole family? How do we support the parents, grandparents, caregivers, along with all the great stuff that we're doing with the kids? Because as we know, it's a whole unit, and the whole unit needs to, run simultaneously and run together with all the changes that we go through, right? All the changes as the kids are going through different developmental changes. The family has to go through those changes too. And what we really saw in the field early on was a lack of support with the families. There's a lot of new stuff that was coming out for the kids, but not a lot of stuff that was coming out for the family. So Shannon and I, a few years back, created the family services department, and we are dedicated to now families, supports and guidance and education, and sometimes just an ear to cry on it so that we can help you guys through.
Yeah. And I really got to give a shout out to you, Vince, because, like you, I've had this dream for a lot of years that I look at the success that my family was able to have. It was hard-won success. I don't ever like to candy coat it. It was hard. It's hard for families doing ABA, but I look at how we got through it, and I look back, and I'm always like, what helped us so that I can make sure that I'm providing that for other families. And one of the things that really helped me was that there was a family that we met that said to me, here's what you need to know. Here's the 411. You need to know this, this, and this, and they're going to say this, and you're going to think this, but it's really this. And from parent to parent, right? And so much of what I've continued to do over the years has been about that we do a whole thing here called parent to parent. But I always had this vision, and I know you had a vision about this orientation that we could do. And it wasn't until you and I were sort of on separate teams when I came back to CARD, and when they put us back together, and I said a couple of things to you, but I was at a place where I was a little bit stuck, and you were like, how about if we do this? And you just made it all make sense. And I am amazed at how quickly we were able to like go, and
Put it
now there's this very robust, I think, beautiful orientation that's happening at CARD. If new families are coming to CARD, the truth is, if you're a family that's been at CARD for a while and you want to come to the orientation, we welcome you. We have people doing that, which is amazing to me. But I love that this is how we get to meet our new parents, and it's you and me and Lisa Bancroft, who is a BCBA, and we spend time with these families. And it's just, I just want to thank you. It's such a gratifying part of my life right now to spend that time with you and Lisa and those families. And I just don't think it would have happened without you, Vince.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I love seeing that list grow. Today I was looking at the list, and we're over 120 families that we met over the past 2 months.
Yeah.
Right. We started in February. So that's been great. And then at the same time, we're getting chatter of the other stuff that they want, that we've already talked about that's on our to-do list.
Yes.
To help current families, and there's so much that kind of stuff we've done in the past that we want to reintroduce, but so many more new things that we do and that that we're passionate about to help, the families along their journey. And I think that's something that we always have to remember, is that it's a constant journey. There's a constant development. There's a constant change, where it's not just front loading. It's not just, what do we do and give them supports once they graduate or transition away from CARD. But there's a whole journey in between that we want to give them more support. We want to give them more education. We need to give families more guidance, connect them with different families, right? We have a support group where we're developing a newsletter. We're looking at, making sure that there's other events that they get notified of, right? And we've really increased our communication in regards to different events and different opportunities for families that come up. Guest speakers is back with PTA.
Yeah.
Just a lot of stuff is exploding, and I'm super excited to be a part of it.
Well, and you would have to be in the inner workings of it to see, but we all know I can talk. Like, that's not a problem. Give me a topic and I can talk. Vince can also do that, by the way, but Vince has extra superpowers. Vince can also send out a mass email. Vince can coordinate something. Vince can distill something. Vince can make, updates to PowerPoints and keep track of things like Shannon cannot. So one of the things that you do at CARD, you have been the keeper of the thing called the list for several decades. You have been aggregating this list of things that are resources and support for families. I tell people it's one of the benefits of being at CARD that you get access to Vince's list. And it's become this epic thing that people are like, do you have the list? Yeah. Have you seen the list? It's, did you this? And Vince just added this, because it's a living, breathing document that it's not static. You add stuff to it all the time. And you're so good about it, Vince, because I'll just mention something in passing that I'm like, I heard about this thing. And of course, I've written it down nowhere. I have not done a post about it on Facebook, but I heard about it. And then 6 months later, I'm like, where's that thing? I don't even remember what the name of it is. And Vince is like, I put it on the list. You're so amazing about that.
And so we encourage people to give us more good resources so we can get to the list.
If you want to be on Vince's list, or you have a resource that you want to be on Vince's list, let us know, because he is the keeper of the list. It's amazing. So Vince, we invited you today to talk about, it's been a very busy month of April. We have had so many autism experts on. We've had so many self-advocates on the show. We've had parents. We've had everything under the sun. But one of the things that we have not yet talked about, and we're down to the last couple of days of the month here, we haven't really talked about the stress on a parent. And I always like to be very particular about this and say, I have so many friends that are adults on the spectrum that say, it hurts my feelings when you talk about how stressful it is to be a parent of a kid on the spectrum. So I always like to make sure that I say, by the way, as a parent, and I identify as a parent of a neurodiverse individual, it is not our kids that are stressing us out. Ever. It is not our kids that are stressing us out. What is stressing us out is the expectation that we somehow have to be super parents who know how to do an IEP. We know all the laws around that. We know how to do insurance funding. We know how to look up Medicaid waivers. We know how to do all these ABA techniques so that our child is happy and in this educationally enriched environment. And some of us are, put the pressure on ourselves that it's like, I need to learn this today. Because it's my kid that needs that. And anything less of hitting it exactly out of the park is failure as a parent. And that is stressful. And then you meet the person at school who you find out didn't tell you about the program that your child could have gotten, but you didn't ask for it because you didn't know, and you feel like failure. And even the fear of failure is so, for me, there were times that it would paralyze me. So I really wanted to talk with you because you're a licensed marriage and family therapist and you get this in a way that I think other people don't get, about the stress that wanting to be a great parent for a child and not being able to do all those things, because who can,
Right.
how we cope with the feelings around what I need to do as a parent.
Right. You need the PhD and everything, right?
Yes.
In as you mentioned, many families feel this way, right? It's like you said, you have to be a lawyer advocate at IEPs and with your insurance company. You need to be a CPA to understand the codes and the limits and what insurance will and will not do. On top of it, you need to be a BCBA and understand all the behavior terminologies and how to do this and yada, yada, yada.
And a nutritionist.
And a nutritionist, exactly.
And a doctor.
A sports psychologist and, a physiologist, occupational therapist, speech and language therapist, right? All the different things that are followed through by parents, families, caregivers at home, right? But as Shannon's saying, you don't have to be the expert. You have the experts around you to rely on. And I think that's one of the identifying problems right in the beginning, is that as a parent, you oftentimes feel that we should be the ones that are the know-it-alls.
Yeah.
We should be the ones that are responsible and have to be the driver or the leader of either a treatment program or an intervention or what have you. And sometimes it's hard for us to give up that control. Sometimes it's hard for us to reach out to a professional, reach out to an expert and say, I have no clue on what to do here, or this is completely outside of my knowledge base and I don't know what to do. Could you please help? We have that internal desire, but I also think it's an internal drive to be the end all for our kids. And so the first thing we need to do is identify that. Identify our strengths, the things we are knowledgeable about, the things we are good with, and the things we're not knowledgeable about, and the things we need support and help with. And when we can do that, now we've started to separate out where we need expert opinions, help, guidance, support, and where we can continue to build on our strengths and continue to be, successful as a parent, while those other skills and knowledges are going to continue to grow by supported, by collaborations with your BCBA, collaborations with other card professionals like Shannon or myself, or maybe a teacher or, a school district, personnel, those types of things, or other, disciplines of speech and OT and PT and the such. So when we can identify where we need support, now we have to be willing to support it, willing to engage in it, right? We're not going to go, no one can come in and fix your stress. No one can come in and fix your anxieties. But I can tell you this, if you are active in the treatment, you are active in the support, you are active in the participation that is offered to you, the less anxiety you will feel over time and the more successful your child will have in the treatment.
Yeah.
So that's the first start.
Yeah. And I know we're going to talk about self-care because I know that that's a platform that I call you the grand poobah of self-care now. Because one of the things that I was hearing you talk about and I was like, oh gosh, but a lot of us get to shut down. where it all seems like there's so much that, like I said before, I get paralyzed. Some people call it shut down. I called myself the amazing paralyzed woman. Because I would be thinking about all the things I needed to do and I would just lock up. Because I also think we are all trying to go full tilt and we are not cognizant of the fact that we have to have breaks. So let's pause for a second and bring in the self-care aspect of this, Vince, and talk to us, because I'm still not great at this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a great person. I can talk about it and why I'm not great about it, but I think it's really important for you to give us all that pep talk.
And then, as Shannon has heard probably 400 times now, because we go over it every Thursday, self-care is super important. Now, I know many of you are thinking, I don't have time for self-care. I have to do X, Y, and Z, and then I got to go A, B, and C, and then I got to take care of M, N, and O. And by the time we get to the night, it's just pure, exhaustion, shutdown, and we're going to bed, right? Let me tell you, you cannot rinse and repeat that for very long, right? And I know it's something that we feel that we have to do. We have to care for others. We have our kids, we have our spouse, we have our family, we have our jobs, we have just, our responsibilities. But if you don't find time every day, not a little bit, but every day to do some self-care, you will burn out. And that's when we start to get health issues. That's when we start to get mental health issues, right? Yeah. This is when our anxiety sometimes can turn into panic or turn into something more. This is where maybe we start to feel depressed. We start to feel overwhelmed. We start to feel defeated. Maybe this is when we start getting ulcers, or we start getting sleep apnea, or we start getting digestive issues, right? If we don't take care of ourselves along the way, we're not going to be able to keep this engine going. We're not going to be able to keep the treatment plan going for the family. Now, obviously, we'll continue the treatment plan with the child, but you have to continue the treatment plan for the family. And so what I always recommend is that you have to take at least a half an hour, at least, could be more, but try not to ever do less, of 30 minutes a day to take care of yourself. Do something that brings you joy. Something you enjoy, something that maybe calms you, right? And it could be anything. It could be listening to a favorite podcast, it could be reading a book, it could be gardening, taking a walk, listening to a good piece of music, right? Sometimes it's just organizing, right?
Yeah.
Getting our room organized, getting our things organized, because we feel confident then. We feel more organized. We feel more in tune. And if we can do 30 minutes a day minimum of just self-care, and that could be broken up into 2 15-minute breaks or 3 10-minute breaks where you're able to spread that out, I guarantee you will feel better. And now you'll have more energy and more resource to tackle those stressors that come up, right? The daily stressors, maybe a bigger stressor. And sometimes it might have to do with, something that's outside of the family. Maybe it's a work stressor or an extended family stressor. But if you take care of yourself, you'll be better posed to be able to deal with that without getting sick and without breaking down.
And when you were describing all the things that can happen, I was like, I am all of those dwarves, the sleepy, indigestion, all of those dwarves. So with the CPAP and the sleep apnea and all of that stuff and the ulcer, yeah, been there, done that. So again, I'm not the best person, or maybe I am somebody good to talk about this because I need this as much as anybody else. And I needed it as much as anybody else when my child was having therapy, because I am the person that had a breakdown and became agoraphobic and had to get help. While my son was in therapy, where I could not leave my house. So, it can, I know how it can stack up.
Sneak up on you, right?
It's not good if we just, and can I tell you that the only reason why I got the help that I got was because I saw that it was affecting my son, that we were out someplace and I couldn't stand to be out. We would go someplace and I would start to hyperventilate and I would say, I got to go home. I can't be out. And my husband would say, what's happening? And I would say, I feel like I'm dying. I got to go home. And that's what I would always say. And then we got me outside someplace and I was trying to breathe through it. And my son started to hyperventilate and say, I want to go home. I want to go home. I feel like I'm dying. And I went, ooh, who taught him that? Me. And then it became absolutely critical to me because we won't take care of ourselves for ourselves sometimes, just keeping it real. But if we remember that how we do self-care is how we are teaching our children to do self-care, I think it becomes much more of a priority. But I do want to say that often when somebody like Vince says you should be doing 30 minutes of self-care a day, I mentally hear you all screaming, where's my child when I'm doing that? Like, how do I do that with, I've got 4 kids and 3 of them are on the spectrum and, how am I doing this? I do, there are many conversations that we can have about getting respite and getting connected to respite so that you have respite. I also want to point out, for those of you doing ABA programs, there is a built-in time when your child is at the center or somebody else is with your child that can be respite. But for me, even in the beginning for me to get to the point where I was willing to fight for the respite was that every time I would get my son into the car, because that was the most stressful, getting him into the car and getting wherever we had to go for whatever therapy, is that somebody had me do 3 deep breaths in the car. I wasn't allowed to drive the car until I did 3 deep inhales and 3 deep exhales. My son was in his 5-point harness in the car seat behind me. So he was okay. It takes less than a minute. And I would do those 3 deep breaths. What I did not realize in those moments that he was learning, and eventually he was taking those 3 deep breaths with me. What a wonderful thing to teach my son.
Exactly.
Instead of teaching him I need to go home. I don't feel right. I think I'm going to die.
It's the right message, right? Because we all get anxious. We're all going to get overwhelmed at times. And not only the message we want to send ourselves, but the message we send to our children and those around us is that I know how to cope with it. I can calm myself down. Might take a minute, might need a few moments alone, but you can calm it down. And now that's being what's observed. And that also is going to be what's modeled.
We forget that our kids are watching us all the time.
Yeah.
And if we want to, the thing I want to do the most in life is be a good parent. And I don't hit that every day. Let's just be honest here. I don't hit that every day, but I can tell you the biggest compliment that I ever got from my son was years ago, I was painting his bedroom. This was during COVID. I was painting his bedroom. And, I got about halfway done and I was like, oh man, this is a much bigger task than I thought it was. And I really don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do it. And then I just changed a couple of things and I got busy. And my son it was during COVID. So he was taking classes in the room next to me. And he saw me go through that period of time when I was like, I don't want to do it. But then he saw me get busy and he came in and he said to me during his lunch break, he said, can you teach me that? I said, how to paint? Sure. Get a paintbrush. You can come and paint. You got time before your next class. He said, no, how to get through something when the going gets tough. He said, I see that you know how to do that all the time, Mom. And I was like, really? I don't think I do. And he was like, yes, I see that, something gets hard and instead of giving up, you go through it. Hugest compliment my child ever gave me. And then I had to think about it and think, okay, how do I get through things? And I never really had thought about it before. And I said, when I'm successful at it, I picture it already done. That's what I do. And that's what we did with ABA and autism. Mm-hmm. On days that it was hard, Vince, I always had a picture in my head of where we wanted to be. And that was always my son in a cap and gown, and that graduating from high school and me standing there and saying, we did everything we could and now the world is your oyster. And so whenever it got tough, I would picture us standing there and doing that. And then somehow I just had enough energy to do it. And I could get through it. But I bring this up because our kids are watching us, even when we don't think they are. And I'm so gratified to know that he watched that and not just the stuff that I did that I wished I hadn't done in front of him.
Right.
So
you said they're always watching.
They're always watching and they're learning from us. So if we think about that and put that to good use and say, that doesn't mean that you never have anxiety in front of your child. But if you do have anxiety, what ways are you using to calm yourself? Me breathing in the car meant him breathing in the car. Me freaking out meant him freaking out.
Right.
So
you coping with something, he's learning to cope with something.
Exactly. So to me, that's a little bit of a shift from, I think sometimes as parents, we think, oh, I cannot let my child see that I'm scared or that I'm anxious. But instead, did your lights leave you?
Yeah, lights went out again.
I was like, are we waving traffic down?
Yeah,
I'll try to wave for you.
I see myself lighting back up.
There we go. Woo. But so then if we think about, okay, so how can I use this? Then we apply that to the self-care. That's a powerful thing. Because when I think about my son now in college, I do see that there are times that my son is pushing himself because he's like, I got to get this in. And I'm like, I taught that too. But I can do better at teaching self-care by participating in that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lesson for all of us.
Right. It is. And I think that's stuff that we have to be aware of too, right? When we're pushing, doesn't mean the end goal isn't achievable. It just means maybe you need to take a break. And it's okay to take breaks as long as you still have the goal in mind and you still have that path or that determination to go ahead and finish whatever it is you started. Yeah. Doesn't mean it has to be a single, a linear, road. You can take breaks. You can give yourself that time to catch up, to catch your breath, to relax a little bit, right? Now, each of us is different. Some people, they can't disengage too long because if they do, it's just way too hard to get back on track again. And that's okay. We each know our own limitations. But that doesn't mean a break isn't necessary. It doesn't mean a break wouldn't be helpful, right? Especially when you feel that you're getting overwhelmed. And to your point, if you're doing that, we're modeling that for our kids too, because as we know, they're constantly being pushed. They're constantly being evaluated. They're constantly being asked to learn a new skill and to develop into a new skill, right? And sometimes as we do, we give them breaks.
Yes.
Right? We push, let's play. We push, let's eat. We push, let's have some fun. Right? So that we're also advocating for that joy, for that creativity, for that, part of them that brings them joy, that brings them calmness, so that when we go back to the push, learn new skill, they have more energy to do that. That's what we're showing them by doing it as well.
Absolutely. What do you say for parents because another pocket of the stress is other people, whether it's, the friend who thinks they have such great advice or, the school administrator. I find that people often give parents of kiddos on the spectrum unsolicited advice about what they think they should be doing with their child. That I have had school people tell me, what you're doing is wrong. You should let your child come to school and not be doing, an early intensive behavioral intervention that, by the way, has been found to be much more effective than their program. But they're telling me, that's not good parenting. What you're doing, you're having them miss social opportunities. That kind of stuff eats at you. Or the friend who's like, well, I don't understand why you're doing this. Like, why can't you come on this vacation? Seems like you're spending all of your time being so consumed with autism. I remember the one friend of mine that a family member said to her, you're so consumed with autism. That's all you ever talk about. And you're angry all the time. And And I was like, man, that's hard to hear as a parent. It kind of eats at you while you're trying to do this amazing thing. And I think it causes more stress. Do you have anything in your bag of tricks to help parents to be able to like deal with that kind of stuff so that it doesn't impede our progress? So to speak.
Right. And the first thing is don't be resistant, right? Let people give you advice. Remember, you're the one who gets to decide who takes it and who doesn't. They don't. They have no power over your decisions. They have no power over your decision making. And I think a lot of times, there's nuggets and there's diamonds sometimes that come with people's advice or unsolicited, support. Now, does that mean their message is given the right way? Does it mean that they're 100% accurate? Does it mean that is it at all true? It doesn't have to be, right? However, if we're less resistant, we're less defensive about people giving us advice, the more empowered we become because we're the ones who get to make the decision. Right. So I always encourage my families, if someone wants to give them advice, don't say, oh, no, we're good. It's fine. Just listen, bring it in, because sometimes you might find a nugget that's like, oh, I didn't realize that I looked angry all the time. I don't feel angry all the time, but maybe I'm displaying that. Something to work on, something to talk about, something to keep in my mind to work on.
And this is why we have Vince
completely off base. You can just say, thank you. I really appreciate, you caring about me to give me some advice, and then you can move on. But I think sometimes we get so defensive about it. We start creating our own rub. We start creating our own negative feelings to it. But remember, you have control over it.
Well, this is why we have you on, Vince, because I would say to this parent, spend less time with them. They don't know what they're talking about. That doesn't
mean not spend less time with them overall. I'm just saying in the moment.
Yes.
How we can exchange it.
I loved the meme years ago and it was a bunch of jargon terms that had to do with IEPs and ABA. It was like, if you don't understand what the difference between a 504 plan and an IEE and an IEP. And if you haven't, talked to your BCBA 3 times about how do we do DRA and the difference between DRA and DRO, then you should not be giving me advice. I want to have that t-shirt, but I think your way is a much happier path, Vince, to be like, okay, and then just move on. So that is why we bring Vince, so that he can be the voice of reason. I can't believe it, but we're like out of time already, Vince. It's like crazy. I know. But you have so much good information always. I would love to welcome you back and have you be a more regular, if we can do that, if we can fit that with your schedule.
I would love to do it regularly again. That was great.
Okay. I would look really forward to that. And our audience loves you. So we can't get enough of Vince, the voice of reason and the grand poobah of self-care. We need to have you come on sometime while we're doing like the cucumber things and a face mask and do that while you're
do some mindfulness.
Right. Some breathing.
Think about your breathing.
I'll tell you something we used to do on Autism Live that I would like to reinstitute. We put out a couple of meditations, mindful meditations that were for stressed out parents of special needs kids. There was 2 of them, one for parents and one for kiddos. And I would love to work on that with you, Vince, and put out just a few of them that people could listen to. Because sometimes people tell me, they say, I get so... if I'm asked to meditate, I'm so in my head thinking about everything. It's much easier if there is a guided meditation that I can do, because that gives me something for my mind to focus on. But it's hard to find free ones. There's a ton of them that cost money, but free ones that are thinking about the needs of people that have loved ones on the spectrum. So maybe that's something you and I could play with.
Yeah. For sure. I will put it on the list.
It's on the list now.
A different list.
So thank you so much for being with us, Vince. And we will schedule you in regular now.
Sounds great.
All right. You take care.
See you guys soon.
Bye-bye. Oh my gosh, you guys. So only one day left in April. Tomorrow, we welcome back Dr. Grant Pichet. She will be here talking about building language, things that you guys can be doing at home to help. And it's a great time. The truth is, for Ask Dr. Doreen, you can ask a question about anything. You can tune in live and ask on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. Ask live questions. We will be live tomorrow. You can send in questions beforehand to me, Shannon at autism-live.com. You can send in questions on askdrdoreen.com. Those go through Marina, and Marina is amazing. And we get those questions answered on a regular basis. So please feel free in whatever way that you want to ask questions, but it can be about anything. But specifically, our starting topic tomorrow will be building language. So if there's anything about that you have questions, please write in. But again, absolutely anything. I'm going to sneeze. That's where we're at. So before I sneeze, I'm going to, no, I'm not going to make it. Oh, good heavens. There we go. Thank you. Didn't mean that to be so loud in everyone's ear. But before I sneeze again, thank you guys so much for being here during this wonderful month. I hope if you missed any of our stellar shows that you will go and listen to them on podcast or check them out on our YouTube channel. They're there for you in perpetuity. It's all free for you. So please go check them out and join us tomorrow for Ask Dr. Doreen. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.